Welcome to today's mindset hack. I've been wondering if I should do this mindset hack or not. And I think I actually should because it's really specific to parents. And I know that a lot of parents are homeschooling right now and or cooked up in their house with their kids. And some of my students had a really incredibly tough time. Some of my students have lost parents, even on the other side of the world, couldn't attend a funeral or watch grandma. Some people had COVID in their house, mom being in quarantine, several rounds of COVID in one household. There's one person. There's also, I heard that there's a lot of calls to child abuse hotlines, moms who are just about to lose it at this point, homeschooling. There's a lot going on, and then there's also the situation where kids are not in their normal routine, not seeing their friends, social connection, siblings fighting. There's a lot going on in a kid's life. And all fairness, there's also a lot going on in the life of a parent right now. And I'd like to just really honor, I thought about you all a lot. I know how hard this pandemic has been on myself. Not in terms of quarantining. I loved quarantining. But it was hard in terms of the impact of having to take on a major project to save my business that was so incredibly challenging while you're hemorrhaging money in your business. You can kind of get a picture of someone who built their livelihood around group seminars, and then there's not being able to fly home and things like that. So I've had a really tough time, but I have had an amazing time here. And I do think that, with the online training that I created in nature, which I don't know if I will say I will never do it again. I actually just may. But I will go into it with a different mindset. The mindset that I went into creating these videos, but also the larger training videos, was that it was going to be as easy as when I did it in a studio environment in my house 7, 8 years ago. And taping in nature, specifically in the desert during a pandemic, is incredibly tough. It's incredibly tough in a place of bad Wi-Fi and remoteness. It has been. I think some people climb the Mount Everest. I have done something really extremely challenging, I feel, which may have shown in these videos that I'm sometimes absolutely just exhausted. But I created something amazing. And so going back to the parents, I can't imagine what I went through and then being a parent on top of it. And that includes being abroad somewhere. So I'd like to honor you, moms and dads, homeschoolers, cleaners, amateur psychologists, all of the different roles that you fulfill. I'd like to honor you. Okay? So really, I don't know how you did this, and I don't know why you're not signing up for permanent online therapy or coaching at this point. So I thought about, what is something that a parent may not have time to Google for, or may not think of Googling, or wouldn't connect positive psychology to having a solution, or science having a solution for you right now. Well, it does actually a little bit. So I'd like to go into the question about, will this pandemic permanently sort of leave a mark on your children? Okay. Now, the article that I read kind of gave me a little angst on the inside, I have to be honest, because most of the article was based on research done on children who survived wars and the Holocaust and things like that. I was like, it was written by an American doctor in positive psychology, and I was like, if that's in Europe, that article would be met with a big fuck you, because as you may have noticed, for people who actually went through World War II on their home soil, to kind of start comparing things with the Holocaust or Nazis, or having an understanding as to what it's like to come from a family who has experienced war or has been in a war, that is incredibly insensitive. And I feel that things like comparing presidents or political system to Nazis, I'm sorry, you have no fuck's clue what you're talking about. And that includes this doctor comparing this pandemic to what children went through in World War II. I'm sorry, I don't think there's any comparison. I've even saw certain memes of people saying that they now understand what it's like to be Anne Frank. Before Anne Frank went into hiding, there was a real big fear for years going on with the 1938 persecution of when the Germans started to already target the Jewish people, and they fled to the Netherlands. There was an enormous amount of insecurity at that moment in time. Anne Frank was 2 years into hiding. If she would put one foot outside, she would be arrested, put on a train into a concentration camp. I don't think that this is the same as to what anyone is going through right now in quarantine. It's just not the same. I'm sorry, you're gonna walk out of this quarantine, and you know you will. Anne Frank never had that security if she would live to tell the tale, which is why during the day they couldn't walk around inside the annex. They had to have the blinds closed, and only in the evening time could they flush the toilet and walk around a little bit. So this is not comparable. And so I'd like to just, the reason why I'm telling you this is not to ridicule people who are ridiculous. Well, I am. But the reason why I'm telling you this is because we need to put some nuance into what the reality testing is here, and how bad this pandemic crisis has truly been. So what are the facts here, right? So I want you to think, if you're a parent, and for those of you who are not a parent, I'd like you to tell other parents about this, just to do a quick reality check first, right? What is it truly that your child, regardless of how you feel, what your child realistically has really been through, okay? What helps often, use a trick of NLP to project your children in the house, and yourself also, so you're not looking through your own eyes, but to kind of play the movie of the last months, and to sort of like study each of your children separately as to what's the balance of the positive and negative emotions they still felt. Did they feel safe? Though maybe not getting along with their siblings, did they have a sense of connection? Did they still Zoom? Did they still have activities? So, how did you relate to your children? What is really their experience? Okay. And if you don't know what their experience is, you could have a conversation with them to ask. It's kind of like a veiled way of doing triage, or no, we're going to like do diagnostics. But isn't that important though? That my brother is a really amazing parent, and he makes lots of decisions for his child, and a lot of his decisions is that my niece is a certified genius. And of course, we all know that genius comes from the paternal line's aunt. Yeah, is that he navigates that, and he doesn't do it based on what the school is saying or what the psychologists are saying, and he's consulting everyone in this process. He doesn't do it based on what academics say. He just literally interviews his child on a regular basis on how happy she is and if she's bored or not. And that determines the decisions. So I'd like you to steal a little parental advice from my big brother Niels on this. And so what I recommend you doing is to start maybe interview your kid, where to kind of go ask some questions on how happy are you to leave this quarantine, of course, but also in quarantine, to just kind of know what's kind of get a pulse here if you haven't already. Yeah, because I think that to step into their little maps of the world, you cannot assume that you will know. It may, whatever their answer is, may be very surprising. Now, it's also sort of like you need to sort of reality test what's truly what happened in your house. There may have been someone in the house who lost their job, or has experienced a lot of stress that may indicate that there's going to be financial problems. What's the exposure of your children to something like that? What's your exposure to children to the fear of getting COVID or having COVID in the house? Worrying about COVID, what's the experience there? Has there been any loss in the environment? What's the impact? What's the roles that they technically need in their lives to feel happy and whole that they weren't able to connect into? And a lot of you are, of course, thinking about their friends. But what about your child's mentor? The mentor that is not you, but the mentor. Every child should have a mentor. And that doesn't have to be like an officially hired person. But every kid needs to have a mentor. There is a lot of evidence around how one of the reasons why children are so angsty and so prone to suicide right now is because they're raised with the idea that they're equal to adults. And in that, they don't seek any mentors. And in previous generation, we would look at either a parent as a mentor or a teacher or an aunt or a coach in soccer, whatever it is, we would have mentors. And so if your child has usually an adult out there who say, your mom is a little overwhelmed because she's so busy, to put that in perspective for your child, but she loves you, that person, have they been able to talk to this person, right? That's a really important thing to also consider. And without you listening in on the background, because having time, let's say, with grandma alone is different from having a Zoom call with grandma with mom listening in the background. Makes sense? So you need to look for that. What has your child truly been exposed to? And the reason why I'm saying this to you is that you want to get into this map rather than using your own map. And great questions to ask using NLP in this case, and to step into their world, is who and what and how specifically. Then you get into more specific details. Ask them sort of questions that are open-ended rather than leading. Open-ended, so who, what, how specifically, and some open-ended question. It's like, how specifically did you experience this pandemic? What was it like for you? And then they come with, of course, the simple answer is, I was bored. Yeah, and how did you solve that problem? What helped? What made you feel better? And to kind of tap into what's the temperature here, okay? So, will there be any lasting effect if it was horrible in your household? Well, then maybe we should draw on some research that was done after World War II. And they did it the same research after wars like Rwanda and other more localized disasters. And what they truly found is that children who have lasting effects from big events like that in history, in society, depends on the amount of exposure. Yeah. So children who, let's say, would wake up to bomb raid alarms going off and then having to run for their lives because several family members that they loved already got killed, were way more psychologically sort of impacted by, that sound. If they would hear it, they would freak out. A child who's been in the Holocaust has seen a lot of atrocities happening. Has a different impact than a child who was in a rural countryside and there was just some hunger, and they're waiting for time to pass. So the amount of exposure is really a factor, which is why I sort of mentioned the triage here. And well, what has then been proven to help in terms of a mindset hack for children is to connect them after this event to their mentors, or to a mentor if they don't have one already. To connect them to their mentors. If that's grandma, bring them back into grandma's world if that's safe and sound. Make sure they have a buddy, a person who is an adult who can sort of like keep tabs on them. You could hire a coach to be their buddy, depending on where you live. I may know a coach where you live, so feel free to contact me. If you live somewhere remote, I can possibly help you find someone online. To just contact me. So connect to mentors. Think out of the box, right? You could ask a neighbor. You could ask, someone that you know well, and can have sort of like this coaching mentor-like relationship with your child. And the second thing that has been really proven to help is connecting kids to the greater good. And that is through projects like helping people in the community, or working on some really cool random act of kindness for someone that they know. It's connecting them to activities that are in service of the greater good. So this is a longer video than usual. If you're still watching, as a parent, please do it. As an aunt, as a champion of children, tell all the parents, because they need to know this, and help some parents out. They've been really struggling with their kids in the house. And so the online training is at courses, globalnlptraining.com. And for both NLP and positive psychology, I think the best reason to take it is if you actually are a parent. And tomorrow I'll be here, 9 o'clock Los Angeles time, noon Miami, 6 p.m. in Amsterdam, and midnight on Bali. And those are our live NLP